very much for your patience. I know it's been a little bit long getting organized here, and with clinical trials, timelines are everything, so we'll try to make up. Okay. All of us, I think, have a sort of a deep feeling that the current pharmaceutical model is somehow not working properly. Okay, it's broken, it's fragmented, and I think for us to try to move on and either to fix it or to find something new, we really need to pause and figure out why is it not working the way it should. Okay, so I think this is something, before we can move forward, we need to figure out what's going on. So if we look at actually the pharmaceutical model, there's several things that are very striking. One is the high attrition rate. So if you start with approximately 10,000 compounds, by the time you go through preclinical and clinical trials, you really are left with maybe one new molecular entity that gets approved and registered and launched on market. So a huge attrition rate. Okay. The second thing that we need to consider is that this is a very long development cycle. So if you look at the discovery phase, clinical development, the regulatory reviews, we're looking at probably about 12 to 15 years from the time we start looking for targets to the time a new medicine is approved. Okay, that really is really a very long time, and we may not realize it, those of us who are in the pharmaceutical industry and who have been in the pharmaceutical industry. But when I speak with colleagues who are in other industries, they are actually amazed at how long the product development cycle is. For example, they made me aware that the iPod, from the time it was conceived to the time Apple decided to launch it, was about 18 months. So, I mean, that may be very remarkable, but I think in the electronics industry and other industries, automobile industry is probably much shorter product development cycles, somewhere closer to 3 to 5 years. So when we look at what does it mean to have such a long product development cycle, okay, if we are trying to determine what medicines we want to provide to patients, and again, healthcare, pharmaceuticals is about patients in the end, and I think this is something we must not forget, then the discovery process, developing target profiles, we're trying to predict 15 years into the future what patients will need, what the market will look like. So that's a really, really long time to predict anything right. Like I'm sure most of us would not be able to predict in our own lives where we will be in 15 years, so let alone at a societal level or what will happen. So that in itself is really a huge problem. And then if we add to that the cost and the rising cost, you see that progressively over the years from 1975 to the current time, costs have risen so that now the average cost of every new drug brought to market is approximately $1.2 billion. So really, I think this is an antiquated model which is fraught with problems, and I think this is one of the reasons why the pharmaceutical industry, it's not I think the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why the pharmaceutical industry is in distress. So again, I think most of you should be aware of this and should have seen this, but very quickly, this shows the declining R&D productivity over the past 15 years. So the costs have been rising. In fact, the costs have tripled over the past 15 years, but the R&D productivity, the yield, as measured by new approvals by the FDA, has dropped in half. So that's actually a 1/6 decline in productivity for the amount of investment. And then this is something which the patent cliff. This is something which should put fear in the hearts of every good pharma corporate citizen. You can see the amount of revenues that would be lost in the next 5 years. So approximately 186 billion US dollars will be lost because of medicines going generic in the next 5 years. And if you look at, in fact, the global pharma market, it's about $650 million. So that's almost a quarter or 20% of the total value. So that really is a huge impact. And if we look at a company level, how dire this is, this represents the major multinational pharmaceutical companies, And what this shows is, as a percentage, 100% of their total revenues, how much is revenue is at stake in the next 3 years. So patent expirations up to 2014. So you see in some cases, 60, 70%, and on average for the industry, 44% of the sales revenues are at threat in the next 3 to 4 years because of patent expiration. So again, a formidable problem. And when we put all this together and see how is the pharmaceutical industry doing overall compared to other industries, this is one measure. This is the returns for investors, stock market returns. And we see that if you look at in brown here, these were the returns for the various companies between 1995 and the year 2000, and you see that the returns were really very healthy, in excess of 25, 35%, almost across the industry. And when we look at the same companies during the 2001 to 2006 timeframe, and this is before the financial meltdown, you see really a different story in black, where in fact there's a real decline, some very big companies having big problems in terms of performance and investor returns. And if we look at the whole broad stock market index, we see that the FTSE Global Pharma Index rose 1.3% during 2000 to 2007, and in comparison, the broad market, the Dow Jones World Index rose 35%. So again, a very, very strong, symptom of ill health. Now, in terms of what opportunities exist, so clearly, I think if something is not working, I think we need to look at it and figure out why it's not working, but at the same time look at opportunities of something new. So, a very bright light in this is the performance of emerging markets, particularly in Asia. And this is from Price Waterhouse, and they define E7 being BRIC countries, including China, India, Indonesia in Asia, but also Brazil, Russia, Turkey. And what they predict is that compared to 2006, when you're looking at the E7 being 9% of the market, by 2020 they will be 18% of the world market. And again, these estimates were prior to the financial crisis that particularly hit the US and in Europe, but notably spared, and in fact Asia has continued to prosper. So in fact this might be an underestimate. And during this also, it's not just an increase of the share, but an increase in the total size, because the global pharma market by 2020 will grow from about 645 billion to 1.3 trillion. So again, really, really important to know that the opportunities exist in Asia. And again, it's not only market size, but the dynamics between working in a market that is flat or shrinking, the regulatory atmosphere, the competition is totally different than when you are in a country or a region where there is excitement and growth. And again, if we drill down a little bit, we see it by region or by developed markets versus Asian markets, and these are some of the others, the South American markets and Turkey. And we see the predicted growth here. These are IMS figures. And just to benchmark, because these are actually not the bars are not the same length. This is the 10% point. This is predicted growth. This was growth in 2009 is the dark blue bar, and this is the compounded annual growth rate predicted over the next 5 years. You see that in the developed markets, the predicted growth rate is well below 5%. The notable exception being Korea, which of course is a developed market, but here again you're seeing almost 15%. So Korea, being in Asia, is a great opportunity. And then when we look at Asian markets, China, Vietnam, India, Indonesia, etc., we see consistently over 10, and in some cases actually 25% predicted growth rate. So great opportunity. Okay. So now when we look at the biopharma clinical trials in Asia, okay, what exactly has been going on? What have we been doing here, right, for the past 10, 15 years? So in 1998 is when I look back and I see Quintiles first came into Asia, into India, and the play very much, I mean, I'm not talking about Quintiles, but I'm talking about the industry in general, has been one of access to patients. So Asia has 56% of the world's population, You have lots of patients, lots of medical needs. Where better to go and find patients, enroll them quickly, complete your clinical trials. And that's really what it was. Go and find patients. So it was an offshoring of clinical development, clinical trials, patient enrollment from Western countries to Asia. So the next phase, about 2005, and again, these are approximations, was when people began to think, okay, maybe Asia is just not a place only to go and do clinical trials, but maybe we need to bring our global products into Asian markets as well. And so at this time, companies, multinational companies, became interested in, well, how do we register products particularly in China? And so an entry into their global portfolio, global products into China and other Asian countries. And then in 2011, I think there is a different trend. It's not just a question of, okay, we have these products in the US and Europe, how do we register them in China? I think it's a question of, well, what kinds of things are going to be important in the markets of Asia? So trying to find localize some of the products that are available. And examples of this would be, going to look at, branded generics. I think that is something that created a lot of excitement because generics are important in Asia. So a lot of companies moved to that, a couple of years ago, and there's still that trend. And also looking at maybe fixed dose combinations and those kinds of products. But where will this go? What's the future trend? Okay, and I think what will become important will be not just looking at Asia through Western eyes in terms of, well, how can we do business and how can we take our products and how can we make fixed dose combinations, etc. But beginning to look actually what is happening in Asia. Okay, what is unique about Asia? What are the Asian disease trends? Okay, and what are the medical needs? And this is what should guide us. Okay, it should not only be looking at business models, business opportunities. We are in healthcare. We are making medicines for patients. So I think if we want to fix the model and do it right, we need to look at diseases and look at patient needs. Okay, and this is something that I think is a great opportunity in Asia to look at. And then looking maybe over the future in the next 20 years, what will likely happen is that the solutions that are found in Asia, the healthcare solutions, will then find places back in the West. So there will be what is also known as a reverse innovation, where tailor-made innovations in Asia, looking at problems in Asia, finding solutions for Asians, will then begin to find a home back in Western countries and will perhaps reinvigorate healthcare there. So this is what is happening, and this is what I see where the trend will be, or the opportunity will be. So this is the linear model of drug development we talked about, which we say is not working. So what would, in its place, I think, what are we seeing replace it? And this is not something that will happen. I think this is something which is happening already. So it's not a prediction. I think the prediction is that it will happen more and more frequently. So what we will see is, in fact, away from that linear structure to one of a wheel and spoke, where we're looking at partnerships, alliances. So instead of a company trying to look at the whole development, discovery process, putting all its resources in, they will try to figure out what are they really good at. And they will focus on what they're good at, and then they will create partnership and alliances with other companies who can do other parts of the development process better than they can and specialize. Okay? This is, I think, will be the key to success in the future. And so here, I hope this shows up. Global multinationals, Asian biopharmaceutical companies, biotechs, other niche companies, providing all the different, from access to capital, discovery, manufacturing, etc., and service companies, okay, like Quintiles, like other CROs, will potentially provide parts of these services, but can also be matchmakers in this, okay, by trying to put in companies in touch with one another in terms of creating matches. So I think this is something which will lend itself to the changes and provide a solution to the difficulties in pharma, and particularly be useful in Asia.